Hello and welcome to All About Data by Banking Frontiers. In this interesting series of data conversations, we are having two very interesting gentlemen whom we are going to have some deep insights from. The first gentleman in this category is Mr. Cyril Mohapatra. Cyril is heading digital channels at IndusInd Bank. Cyril, welcome to Banking Frontiers Live.
Thank you, Babu.
Great. And along with Cyril, we have today another luminary from the field of data. His name is Mr. Srikumar Kumar, who is the CEO of Alpharithm, which is a specialist in the area of data governance and master data management. And they are also one of the leading partners to IBM. Sri, welcome to Banking Frontiers Live, conversation on all about data.
Thank you so much, Babu. Pleasure being here.
Let me start with you, Cyril. You have seen the data redefining the business strategies in the last several years. And I think the role of data is becoming increasingly more important. So what kind of transformation have you been seeing with data in the businesses, especially in the channel, retail, payments, which you have been seeing in the last few years?
For us, what I have seen in my career recently is like we have been using data for a lot of, for the acquisition business. In the erstwhile business, we never had any data where, we could see that who is eligible, say, for a credit card, who is eligible, say, for a personal loan. Now, what is happening is that we have the historic trends of our customers who are, banking with us or, who has been a part of our relationship, right? Now, with the kind of transactions he has been doing or with the kind of balances we are maintaining, we have seen that, okay, fine, if he's, using certain tools, if he's a regular customer or he's a loyal customer, he is eligible for a credit card. We convert these kind of data into a potential acquisition, mechanism, and do a predictive analysis using this data, and convert this potential customer into a final, into a final customer into the bank. And I think most of the banks in India are now following this trend, whether it's credit card, whether it's personal loan. We call it as predictive analysis, and then using this analysis, bringing this customer into our own platform, whether it's for savings account, whether it's for cards, whether it's for loans, but bring him into our own ecosystem. Data is there, but how effectively you use the data, is a strategy that every bank or every financial institution has to make it right.
Interesting. How are you as an organization using this unstructured data? What kind of applications or what kind of areas where you have been benefiting from this?
See, any institution, forget even, my organization, but any organization has a lot of unstructured data. I think you need data scientists to gather this information and create into a meaningful data. That is number one. You need to have right tools. So what we do, and we have a team of data scientists and data engineers who are using this unstructured data, putting in a funnel and ensuring that, this data is used in a very, meaningful way. And that is the practice that we also follow. But I think nowadays, most of the banks have realized that, unstructured data has got significant importance. And, at the end of the day, whether it's a structured data or unstructured data, it is a question of how do you make it available? How do you use this data? How do you secure this data? I think that is the most key aspect. But most of the banks, including us, what we do is that we have a mechanism where we make use of the unstructured data and create an algorithm out of it, and then use this, convert this into some meaningful data for our own business potentials.
Interesting. Let me just come to Sri now. What are the right kind of metrics with which this data can be utilized by this organization how can be they made more precise and more structured, considering their unstructured nature, and made useful for application in the financial services sector?
So I think Babu and Cyril, I mean, Cyril was right in the way he was explaining about how banks are currently using unstructured data. I think what we have seen in many financial services and other organizations is that they still have issues dealing with structured data, and the focus is predominantly on how to improve the value of the structured data, how to derive more value out of structured data, and so on. But I think that we could use unstructured data to make structured data more sort of contextual, right? For example, we started on this data lake initiative some time back, where we started storing massive amounts of structured and unstructured data. But the unstructured data was just lying there, and we couldn't derive, or organizations couldn't derive massive value. And because the data was actually stored or hidden in the form of logs, metadata, images, videos, KYC documentation in the case of financial services, and application forms, and where the relationships and maintained, et cetera, and people are not able to derive value of that, right? So we could call this as, let's say, dark data in the industry parlance, right? So by applying certain technology, one can extract valuable insights from this dark data. Now, here I would like to bring this concept called data fabric, which is obviously coined by Gartner some time back, and every enterprise is now talking about data fabric. Basically, it is about providing a technology agnostic platform to access this structured data, unstructured data, which is actually sitting in different silos within the organization. And some of them have gone on-prem, some of them are sitting on cloud, and it's in a hybrid cloud environment today. So it's about accessing all this siloed information across the on-prem and on cloud world, and providing the ability to discover this data, put governance on top of it, and create a consumption layer for analytics and AI applications, which is what Cyril was alluding to as well, which is having a bunch of data scientists to define certain key measures or metrics to take value out of those and make the business sense out of that. Now, again, Babu, each financial services organization is different. Each of their goal is different. But overall, I think it's typically driven by customer experience. That is enhancing customer experience. How do I increase my customer onboarding, and how do I give them the best services I can as an organization, so that they remain loyal to me as a financial services organization. So I think it sort of revolves around these sales and marketing sort of metrics.
Interesting. How can organizations actually make use of the data from these data graveyards, and at the same time reduce the cost? How can you bring in a balance in data acquired from this data graveyard?
So I think the first thing that most organizations struggle with today is understanding what they have and where they have. Right, there is a lot of data that is getting collected in a lot of different applications. Today we are working with one of the top banks in India, where they have 70-80 different onboarding applications, right, channel applications, where they are just collecting customer information. And you can imagine 70-80 application means that many databases. Both, some of them are structured, some of them are unstructured, and no matter how many data scientists you deploy, there is only so much you can do within a reasonable time frame, right? So the first problem we have, Babu, is that organizations don't even know where data is. So first thing I would suggest is discovery of data, right? So you need to understand where your data is, which means you need to go through a process of data cataloging. With data is the same concept. You need to first take an inventory of the data that we have, and that's called data cataloging process. And then you find out, okay, who is the owner of, because there are a variety of data sets available within the organization. So who is the owner of these data set? You assign certain ownership to these individuals within the organization, and you create a cross-functional, organization chart that then says that these are the people that are responsible for this data, and hence, they will help adding more value to the data that I have. So this is where the data governance framework comes in. Then you put some policies in place, you put framework in place, and then that then leads itself to the consumption layer, which is AI and machine learning and enhancing customer experience, etc., etc. So I think the fundamental to deriving value from data graveyard is starting off with the data governance foundation.
Wonderful. Cyril, how do you manage that balance between, using the right kind of data and at the same time managing the governance of data and ensuring privacy of the people? So how are organizations working on it?
Data and analytics is something, a separate vertical, which now most of the banks in India are actually implementing. ICICI has done that. We have done that. Yes Bank is doing that. The most critical aspect around this entire governance is that there are two aspects to governance. One is the IT governance aspect. Second is the security governance aspect, right? The cyber security governance, and of course the operational the operational process of how do you retrieve the data, how often do you purge the data, etc. Coming to IT and security, I think most of the banks and most of the financial institutions have laid down a very stringent guidelines in terms of how do we access this data, what kind of an access do we give to partners, what kind of access internally even the financial institutions needs to have, how often do we purge the data. I think there's a lot of governance regulations that has come in, kicked off over the last 3-4 years, and especially with RBI pushing this entire need of ensuring that there is a very strict governance mechanism implemented by the banks and NBFCs. 4 years, 5 years behind, I don't think so that kind of a policy was there. But yes, because banks, NBFCs has been hit with some bad experiences. I think there has been very stringent guidelines that has come out. Cybersecurity plays a very, very important role in terms of ensuring that data is encrypted. There is a purging process in place. There's an access mechanism to this particular data. There are controls which has been laid down. So I think we, including banks and financial institutions, everyone has to play this role to ensure that the governance is in place. Now, coming back to the businesses, see, at the end of the day, the data is sitting in your premises, right? You need to have right use cases to make use of that particular data. If you don't have the use case, or if you don't have proper analytics team in place, then you may have 1,000 gigabytes of data, but if you do not know how to use that data effectively, that's a challenge.
Interesting. Sri, when it comes to machine learning, especially, or any of these new age technologies, ultimately the foundation is data. So how are you automating a strong data management strategy for banks?
What we're also seeing, and I'm sure Cyril would have experienced this as well with other banks that we are seeing, that 70% of these data scientists are spending time on preparing data, cleaning data, and trying to improve the quality of the data before submitting to the AI models, right? Because they say garbage in is garbage out. So without applying some sort of foundational data management framework, they will not be able to derive value from the AI models, because the models are just models, right? You need to feed the right data. You need to train the model in order for the model to give you the right outcome. So one of the things that we've seen is a lot of time spent on data prep activity than creating the AI model. Now, the thing is, we've also seen customers struggling to physically move data because they have a lot of these different data silos. Last time we were trying to create a data lake and a large data warehouse. I remember trying to create a data warehouse for Standard Chartered Bank many years ago for Basel purposes, which involved 150 countries, 300 source systems, and all trying to build a large credit data warehouse. And it took only about 3-4 years to do that, right? So nowadays we have advanced technologies which will allow you to do those those things without actually physically moving the data. So one of the concepts is data virtualization. So how do you take data from various of the silos that you have, and then run analytics on top of it without physically moving the data, which means that you'll be able to derive value from the data quicker than that was previously available. So technologies are emerging, and the data management foundation is changing.
Wonderful. Cyril, in your case, in your business area, how are you measuring the success of whatever activities you have been doing with data?
Most of the banks and NBFCs, I think, this, while we generate the data, I think we also need to understand that, will I be able to convert 100% of this data into my customers, or will I be able to convert 100% of this, use 100% of the data and acquire all the business? The answer is no. I think the measurability starts that what is your target and what are your target segments as well. I may have, a lot of customers who are mass customers, but if my target segment is HNI, then I'll filter out, some of those segments from the data and try to convert those, those potential leads into my customer. I think it all depends that, from the data, what is the potential leads that you generate, whether it's for new acquisition or for cross-sell. Whether to increase your CASA ratio or to increase your cross-sell ratio. There has to be a target in place. Of course, if someone thinks that you are able to convert all 100% of data that you have into your potential cross-sell or customers, then, that's an extremely wrong model. But anything between 15 to 20% conversion from the data that you have, it's a good target, and that's how most of the banks are also working towards it. And against these targets, you also measure that what is the kind of potential product cross-sell or upsell that you're going to do, because every product has its own profitability, right? Credit card has its own metrics, CASA has its own metrics, loan has its own P&L, right? So based on the ratio that you define at the time of targeting the customer, or before even you reach out to the customer, I think product wise, segment wise, and portfolio wise, the definition and the target acquisition client, becomes very, very critical for ensuring and determining the measurability and the success of the data that you have.
Sri, you have been working with a lot of institutions globally and in different sectors, some in retail, some in technology, some in banking, etc. What are the most favorable parameters, or what are the most interesting parameters you have been seeing?
We have worked with a lot of global institutions in the UK, in Asia Pac, Singapore, etc. So we've seen slightly matured organizations in those regions, and so what they have done is something called infonomics, right? So Gartner coined this term called infonomics, which is around how do I treat data as an asset and put a value to that asset, right? And that field is called infonomics. Now, within infonomics, there are a lot of KPIs that is being defined by Gartner, and obviously not all KPIs are applicable to, or not all metrics are applicable to all organizations. So banks would want to pick and choose some, manufacturing would want to pick and choose some, and so on and so forth. But overall, if I look at it, there are 4 or 5 metrics that sort of resonates with most organizations. And one of them is slightly linked to what Cyril was just explaining, right? Which is called PVI in infonomics terminology, which stands for performance value of information. That is, you have the information. So the moment you have good quality data, that becomes information, and you can start measuring that information, right? For example, that's what Cyril was talking about. You define some KPIs which are very business centric, like your conversion rate, order fulfillment rate in case of retailers and manufacturers, and all the other examples that Cyril was quoting from a banking perspective, conversion ratios, etc. So those are all important drivers. And if you can achieve those metrics, then that means that your data function and data methodology in the organization is working well. So that is what I have seen in many of those very matured data organizations worldwide.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this wonderful insights. And we look forward to more such insights from you in our future conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Babu. Thank you very much. And Sri, good to see you. Pleasure connecting with you. Thank you very much, Banking Frontiers.
Thank you. Thank you, Babu. Thanks, Cyril. Good chatting with you. We will keep in touch.
Thanks.